Hello and welcome, guys. Today, I'll be diving into a 2014 horror, mystery, thriller film titled It Follows. Spoilers ahead, so watch out and take care. The film opens in a quiet suburban neighborhood where a girl rushes out of a house, glancing nervously over her shoulder as she moves down the street. The sound of a door creaking open behind her echoes, though nothing is visible. As the door creaks again in the distance, her father emerges from the house, but she reassures him that she's fine. In a moment of panic, she circles around something unseen before quickly running back into the house. Moments later, she bursts out again, jumps in her car, and speeds off, leaving the unsettling tension hanging in the air. The girl drives to the beach, her father calling her as she picks up the phone. She tells him that she loves him and her mom, almost as if saying goodbye, apologizing for being difficult with them at times. As she gazes off into the distance towards the car, the unsettling sense of finality lingers. The next morning, she is found dead on the beach. The following day, Jay is preparing her pool, relaxing under the sun as she notices strange creatures lurking in the yard. Her sister Kelly arrives, greeting her before mentioning that their friends are at the house, waiting to watch a movie. Jay tells her sister she can't join them because she has a date with someone she likes. As she walks back inside, she finds her sister and their friends already watching an old movie. Jay asks Yara what she's reading, and Yara replies, "The Idiot," commenting that it's about Paul. Later, Jay prepares for her date, slipping into her boots, applying some lipstick, and admiring herself in the mirror. At the cinema, she and her date wait in line for tickets, and as they chat, they play a hypothetical game where he has to pick someone from the crowd to switch places with, while Jay tries to guess who it is. Once inside the theater, Jay suggests that Hugh's choice is probably a guy talking to a girl. Hugh explains that he picked the kid because he envies the freedom of youth, wondering how great it must be to have your whole life ahead of you. They joke about the carefree life kids have, a stark contrast to the responsibilities of adulthood. When it's Jay's turn to choose, she picks someone and Hugh guesses, pointing to a spot, but Jay sees no one there. Thinking he's teasing her, she's confused when Hugh gets visibly scared and insists they leave. He tells her that he just felt sick and needed to get some air, but Jay remains uncertain about what's really going on. After dinner, as Jay and Kelly sit by the window, someone is seen walking toward them, though they don't recognize the figure. The next day, Kelly and Jay take a walk so Kelly can have a cigarette, and during their stroll, Jay confides in her sister, telling her that their mom knows about her relationship, though Kelly doesn't want her to face it. Jay also shares her unsettling experience with Hugh, describing his strange behavior on their date. As they near home, they spot their neighbor Greg washing his car. Later, Jay meets up with Hugh again for another date. This time, they share a kiss at the beach before making love in his car, the evening marked by an odd tension that Jay can't shake off. After their intimate moment, Hugh steps out of the car to retrieve something from the trunk while the girl shares her daydreams with him. He returns to the car, and without warning, he puts her to sleep using chloroform. When Jay wakes up, she finds herself restrained to a chair, with Hugh pacing behind her, shining a flashlight in her face. The moment he realizes she's conscious, he quickly apologizes, insisting that he won't hurt her. Jay, disoriented and frightened, struggles to understand what's happening, as Hugh tells her that she won't believe him, but she needs to remember what he's about to say, no matter how unbelievable it may seem. Hugh explains to Jay that he's passed something on to her, something that was passed to him before, a creature that will relentlessly follow her. It can take the form of anyone she knows or even a stranger, always appearing as someone familiar to get close, but there's only one of it. As Jay screams for help, Hugh continues to lament about this terrifying creature that has haunted him. Then he spots it. He sees the creature approaching and quickly wheels Jay toward the light. A naked woman suddenly appears, and Hugh urgently tells Jay that the only way to get rid of the creature is to sleep with someone, passing it along to them. If the creature kills her, it will come after him next. Jay is confused and terrified as the creature keeps approaching her. In a panic, she tries to escape, but Hugh quickly wheels her away, urgently warning her never to go anywhere with only one exit, as the creature may be slow but is far from dumb. They manage to reach the car and drive off, but back at the house, Kelly, Paul, and Yara are relaxing on the porch, playing cards and drinking. Kelly casually mentions that Jay is on a date with someone new, which doesn't surprise anyone. Just then, Hugh arrives, parking the car and quickly pulling Jay out, leaving her on the road with one last warning: don't let it touch you. As he drives off, Jay stumbles toward the house, and her friends rush to her side. Greg hears the sirens of an ambulance outside and peers through the window, seeing Jay talking to a police officer. The officer asks if the encounter was consensual, and Jay responds that it was, though she admits to never having seen the woman or been to Hugh's house, despite knowing where it was. Later, Jay finds herself in a hospital while the police continue to investigate the scene of the incident. The following day, Jay's mom has a conversation with Greg's mom, recounting the events and revealing that what upset her most was something Hugh had told her. Meanwhile, Jay is in the bathroom, inspecting herself when suddenly, a ball is thrown at her window, but when she looks outside, no one is there. Jay notices a little neighbor boy peeking under her window, spying on her. Later, she's in school, attending a lecture when her attention shifts to something unsettling outside. An old woman in a nightgown is walking slowly toward the window, unnoticed by anyone else. Feeling unnerved, Jay glances at Greg, who picks up on her distress as she hurries out of the classroom. In the hallway, she sees the same old woman trailing her and tries saying hello, but only the girl behind the woman replies. Frightened, Jay rushes out of the school and drives straight to the diner where Kelly and Paul are working, seeking comfort and clarity. Jay confides in Kelly and Paul about the old woman she saw, and the eerie warning Hugh had given her that something would follow her relentlessly. When Paul presses for details about what exactly is chasing her, Jay admits she doesn't know. Kelly suggests they tell their mom, but Paul offers to stay the night to help keep an eye on things. Though Kelly hesitates, Jay agrees, feeling it might ease her nerves. That evening, as the girls prepare for bed with Yara joining them, Paul settles in on the couch, watching an old sci-fi movie while keeping a watchful eye on the house. Yara is asleep in Kelly's room, and their mom is passed out in her own, leaving Jay restless as she heads downstairs where Paul is waiting. He invites her to rest beside him on the couch, mentioning how much he's missed these quiet moments with her just like when they were kids. They laugh softly, sharing memories of the silly things they used to do when suddenly the sound of glass shattering comes from the kitchen. Paul jumps up to check but finds no one, though he quickly returns to wake Kelly and ask her to call the police. Jay, tense but curious, moves cautiously toward the kitchen to see if anything or anyone is there. Jay steps into the kitchen, only to see a half-naked woman slowly advancing toward her, sending her screaming back to her bedroom, where she locks the door in terror. Kelly and Paul knock, pleading with her to let them in, insisting they don't see anyone out there. When they enter, Jay, visibly shaken, asks if something is wrong with her, and Kelly gently reassures her, telling her she's okay. Suddenly, another knock rattles the door. Bracing themselves, they assume it's their mom, but as Paul grips a broom for protection, they open the door to find Yara, who simply says, "It's just me." Jay's friends try to assure her everything's fine, but then a strange man appears behind Yara, stepping into the room just as Jay bolts out through the balcony. In the driveway, Greg, chatting with a girl, notices Jay fleeing on her bike with Paul close behind. Jay heads to a nearby playground, nervously sitting on a swing, anxiously waiting for the ominous presence to follow her there. Soon, she spots her sister and friends running toward her from afar. They meet halfway, and as they embrace, it's clear that everyone is shaken and genuinely frightened, each realizing the gravity of Jay's ordeal. Jay, desperate, pleads with Kelly not to tell their mom. Just then, Greg arrives at the playground, and Jay cautiously asks her friends if they see him, relieved when they confirm they do. Greg, sensing something wrong, asks if they're okay, and they mention a break-in at the house but insist they won't involve the police. Jay, terrified of returning home, says she needs to find Hugh. Greg presses her on what Hugh did to her, but Jay doesn't answer, and instead, he offers to drive them around. The five friends cruise through the city, watching its decay drift past in a blur of desolate streets and shadowed facades as the ominous presence stalks ever closer, never ceasing its relentless pursuit of Jay. They finally reach the abandoned house Hugh claimed was his and cautiously step inside, searching for any clues about his whereabouts. The house is a haunting ruin, every corner layered in decay and neglect. Paul heads up to the attic and begins flipping through some old, grimy magazines. Jay, uneasy, peers out a window, suddenly spotting a figure outside, sending a chill down her spine. Just as panic starts to rise, Paul calls her over, having found a photograph of Hugh, which diverts her attention, bringing a small but crucial lead in their search. Spotting the school logo on the jacket worn by the girl in the photo, they realize this might be their next clue, so Jay and Greg head to the school to dig deeper. After some investigation, they uncover Hugh's real identity. His name is actually Jeff. Returning to the car where the others wait, they share the revelation. Kelly suggests going to the police, but Jay insists on confronting him directly. With resolve, they head to Jeff's house, and when they arrive, Jay knocks on the door. To her surprise, it's Jeff's mother who answers, setting the stage for an intense confrontation. Jeff's mother invites them inside, and soon they're all gathered in his backyard, where Jeff reluctantly explains that he can still see it because it's never truly gone. He tells Jay that if the creature kills her, it'll return to hunt him, which is why he expected her to pass it on by now. Urging her to run far away, he suggests that the creature's slow pace would buy her some time to decide if she wants to pass it to someone else. That night, they drive north, cloaked in silence. Only Kelly and Greg are awake, talking quietly. Kelly asks if his mom will notice he's missing, and Greg dismissively replies that she probably won't even realize he's gone. Greg brings them to an old beach house where his father used to take him hunting, a secluded place they hope will offer some safety. Jay wakes up in the car, and Kelly asks if she's considered Jeff's advice about passing it on. The group quickly settles into the house, where Jay sets up cans on the windows as makeshift alarms. The next morning, Greg finds his father's old gun in the shed and teaches Jay how to shoot, hoping it might give her a sense of control. As they later sit by the shore, a peaceful moment shatters when Greg steps away, and Jay spots a figure approaching them in the distance. Yara is in the water, yet somehow she appears on the beach, unnoticed by the group until she suddenly pulls on Jay's hair, begging for help. In a panic, Paul strikes the creature with a chair, and they all rush toward the shed, with the creature relentlessly following them. Paul is injured in the process. Desperate, Jay grabs the gun and shoots at the creature, hitting it, but it merely gets back up, unaffected. She slams the door shut as it begins to break through. Just then, Greg arrives and reassures them there's nothing out there, but Jay insists there is. As he runs off to check, Jay follows, only to find the creature at the shed's opening, now transformed into a boy. Jay runs from the shed, but the creature follows her, now taking the form of a different girl. Panicking, she races to the car and drives away, leaving the others behind, only to crash into a truck that suddenly pulls in front of her. Jay wakes up in the hospital, her arm broken and head injured, seeing her mom and friends sleeping beside her. As she lies there, a noise in the hallway triggers her fear that it might be the creature, but when the nurse passes by without stopping, her fear subsides. Greg wakes up, and their eyes meet in silent understanding. That night, Greg stays with Jay in the hospital, and they sleep together, allowing her to pass the curse on to him. Days later, Greg is seen with another girl, hinting that he has passed it on to her as well. Meanwhile, Paul watches them from the doorway of Jay's hospital room, feeling jealous of the time Greg is spending with her. Greg reassures Jay that he hasn't seen the creature yet, and when she asks if he believes her, he admits he does, but insists it isn't following him either. A few days later, Jay relaxes in her above-ground pool, feeling an unsettling presence. As she contemplates the feeling, Greg arrives at her house, finding her sister and friends at the door. Greg asks to see Jay, but Kelly informs him that she's not even opening her door. When they ask if he's seen anything unusual, they realize he still doesn't believe what's happening. They press him about what he thinks happened that day at the beach, but Greg leaves without answering. One night, Jay watches over Greg's house from her room, only to spot him walking down the street in his pajamas. He tries to open his front door, but when he fails, he breaks the window. As Jay calls out to him, the creature enters his house through the broken window. Terrified, she rushes over to Greg's house and climbs in through the same window, determined to help him. Jay hears knocking on Greg's door and, rushing upstairs, she sees his mom shouting at him not to open it. But despite her warning, he opens the door, and the creature attacks, killing him. Horrified, Jay gets into her car and drives off, but the creature follows her, taking the form of Greg. She races into the woods, desperate to hide, and falls asleep in her car. The next morning, she wakes up to the sound of music in the distance. Following the noise, she makes her way to the beach, where she finds a group of guys on a boat. Jay strips off her clothes and wades into the water, seeking solace. When she returns home, she finds Kelly and Yara waiting for her on the porch, and the three girls fall asleep together in her room. The next morning, they are woken by a knock at the door, and Jay opens it to find Paul. As he sits down, she tells him that the creature will eventually come for her. Paul urges her to pass it on like before, offering himself as the next target, but she refuses. He then admits that he liked her too and asks why she chose Greg. Jay confesses that she thought he'd be okay, because he wasn't afraid. Paul tries to kiss Jay, insisting that he wants to help, but she pulls away, and suddenly, he has an idea about how they can get rid of the creature once and for all. The four friends pile into a car and head toward the pool they used to visit as kids. As they pull out of the driveway, Jay spots the creature on the roof of her house, its looming presence unsettling her. They arrive at the old city pool and sneak past the fence to get inside, making their way to the water. Paul asks Jay how long it will take for the creature to reach them, and she guesses it might take hours. The group then begins setting up their plan to electrocute the creature by surrounding the pool with various electrical appliances, preparing for a risky showdown. Jay steps into the pool, her nerves taut as she waits for the creature to arrive. She dives into the water, swimming in circles, while the others anxiously stand by, hoping for the creature to appear. Hours seem to pass with no sign of it, until, suddenly, it materializes in the room but only Jay can see it. Reluctant to describe it, she stays silent about its appearance. Paul urges her to point at it so they can track its movements, and Jay, her voice trembling, tells them it's coming closer to her. She wants to flee, but Paul insists she stay put, telling her that the creature needs to be in the water for the plan to work. As the creature begins hurling electrical appliances at her, Jay narrowly avoids being electrocuted, her heart pounding as she braces for the next move. The group is relieved when their plan fails, realizing that the creature is relentless in its assault, throwing objects at Jay until she's submerged in the water. Desperate, Paul grabs the gun and rushes to help, while Jay struggles to dodge the flying debris. She manages to point at the creature to guide Paul's aim, but warns him not to get too close, as it's right beside him. Paul fires, but instead of hitting the creature, he accidentally shoots Yara. Undeterred, Jay points again, and Paul shoots at its hand, momentarily disabling it. Kelly seizes a towel and throws it over the creature's head, giving Paul the opportunity to shoot it in the head, sending it tumbling into the water. Just as Jay thinks she's safe, the creature grabs her from below, but Paul continues to shoot until the creature finally falls lifeless, its grip loosening for good. Jay crawls out of the pool, her ankle marked with finger-like impressions, and Paul urges her to check if the creature is still beneath the water. She inches closer to the edge and is horrified to see the water turning red with blood, but there's no sign of the creature's body. That night, Jay and Paul sleep together, and Paul asks if she feels any different, to which she replies that she doesn't, and he admits the same. The next day, Paul leaves, and Jay stays with her mom, only to discover that the creature had appeared at the pool, disguised as her father, leaving her shaken and unsure of what's real. The morning after, Paul is seen driving around, circling some prostitutes, a sign of his increasing desperation. Later, Jay and Paul visit Yara in the hospital, where she reads aloud to them about death, her words lingering in the air as they hold hands, trying to find some comfort. As they walk home, an unsettling feeling washes over them. Someone seems to be following closely behind, though they can't see who it is, leaving them with a sense of dread that refuses to let go.